Hello and welcome back to Dominion Menagerie bonus previews. We are on day 3 and we are not looking at a way today, rather we are looking at a 4-cost action duration reaction, Village Green, brought to you by the Kinks. So either now or at the start of your next turn, +1 card and +2 actions, or in other words, a village. When you discard this, other than during cleanup, you may play it. So Donald X, in his preview of the card, mentioned that it is the barge version of Village and also the tunnel version of Village. That should be pretty clear why. You can choose to save it for later, like with Barge, and you can get a benefit when you discard it, like with Tunnel. I guess let's start with the top effect. The either now or at the start of your next turn. Obviously, as with Barge, like having that flexibility is certainly a good thing. I think, as is also the case with Barge, in general, you're going to lean towards not taking advantage of it and want to be playing these almost entirely on your current turn, because it lets you do more stuff during your current turn. I mean, certainly there are going to be cases where you save it for later, either because you have more villages than you can take advantage of, or because you don't have anything, that you can use the village on this turn, but you will next turn, that kind of thing. Definitely the flexibility is nice, but I think it's more nice than it is, powerful. And then we've got the lower part of the card, the Tunnel reaction. So I do think that comparing this card to Tunnel is, while apt from a mechanic standpoint, is a disservice to this card from a power level standpoint. So what are the differences between Village Green and Tunnel in terms of the reaction? Well, first of all, Tunnel is a stop card that doesn't do anything for you while it's in your hand. It only does something for you, well, I mean, it's worth a couple of VP, but it only helps you before the end of the game if you can discard it and gain a gold. And then when you discard it and gain a gold, it still hasn't done anything for you yet because you don't have the gold in your hand to play and get the money from. So you need to then go ahead and draw the gold up, which potentially means you also need to draw through the tunnel. And that's slow, and it's slow, and Village Green doesn't have that problem. So first of all, Village Green, when it's in your hand, if you're not discarding it, you can just play it. So I mean, right there, it's already better than Tunnel. And second of all, when you discard it, you play it, you get the value from it immediately, whereas with the gold, you need to go back and draw it. Now, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised that pretty much any village is a better card than Tunnel. But the important thing here is that I think if you think of this card as the village equivalent of Tunnel, I think you end up undervaluing the reaction of this card, because there's a lot of boards where you could activate Tunnel, but you don't necessarily want to. Either you don't want that much gold, or you just don't want a Tunnel in your deck, or the whole process is just too slow, or whatever. You don't want to hurt your draw by adding the cards that you would be using to discard the Tunnel. Village Green has pretty much none of these problems. So for example, if you play a card like an inn or a warehouse that's normally card negative, or hand size negative, and then you play Village Green, you discard Village Green, you've offset that hand size reduction. You play it with a card like Forum, and now your hand size is increased, right? So the effect of this in conjunction with discarding cards is to actually improve their effect on your hand size, or at least to mitigate their negative effect on your hand size in a way that obviously doesn't apply to Tunnel. The other thing about that is that you can use it to increase your terminal space more than if you just play the card normally. So kind of like with Villa, where, if you buy a Villa and put the Villa into your hand, you gain back that extra action. Or kind of like if you have, a card like Herald that plays a village, and now you get the +2 actions as a net increase rather than going from 1 to 2 actions as if you would when you play a regular village. The point here is that by not having to actually play the card, you're not consuming an action to play it, which means the net increase in actions is greater than it would be if you were to just play the card. So another way to say this is just, if you can react with this card, you want to. Like, pretty much every time, because it's going to give you more actions than just playing it. And if you have cards that discard it anyway, it's also going to improve their effects, as I already talked about. So, and not only all of that, but you can also use it like Villa to turn a card that is terminal into a non-terminal. So a card like Storeroom would love Village Green, right? You can discard a whole bunch of Village Greens, and you can get your, draw your cards or get your coins, whatever you feel like. And then you can play all those Village Greens, and instead of it being terminal, now you have a whole mess of actions, right? Or maybe you just have 2 actions because you only had 1. Hey, that's still pretty good. You just turned Storeroom into a village. So, yeah, I mean, I think the reaction is actually really strong. I mean, sometimes you're not going to have any ability to react with it, and all you're going to get is like the sort of barge effect on this village, and that's fine. I mean, village is a good card, and you're going to want it anyway. But when you can activate the reaction, I think this is going to be really, really strong. Now, another point I should mention, and Donald X mentioned this in his preview, is unlike, say, Sheepdog, you're pretty much always going to want to take the play this at the start of your next turn if the reason you discard this is because of a hand size attack or something else happening on your opponent's turn, because +2 actions doesn't do anything for you on your opponent's turn. But again, this is another thing that makes the card strong. Is does it mitigate an attack like that? Not necessarily, although it certainly can. Like if you get Militia and you have 2 Village Greens, you play both of them. You discard both of them and then you play them, and then at the start of your next turn, they get played, and not only do you draw the 2 cards that they would have drawn anyway. So you effectively didn't get hand size attack, but you actually get more actions than you would have if you just played them normally. So again, reacting with this card is really, really good. And I think if you are used to thinking in terms of, well, Tunnel, there's not that many boards where I would want to discard Tunnel, and so this discard thing is probably not that strong. I think that's totally wrong. I think the discard effect of this is really strong. And I think, if you have the opportunity to activate it, you're going to want to. It's going to increase your terminal space. It's going to make those discarding cards better. It's going to be defense against certain types of attacks. It's going to be all sorts of good stuff. So yeah, really like this card. Not the most powerful card we've seen in Menagerie by any means, but definitely think it's a good card. Yeah, so that'll do it for today's preview. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow for another preview.